The expedition vessel descended through violet clouds that wrapped around its hull like living things. Captain Reed watched the landscape emerge below, a world of crystalline forests and silver-veined mountains that stretched toward 3 distant moons. This was Valdros Prime, a planet abandoned by its creators millennia ago, and the site of the greatest archaeological mystery in known space. "Scanners are picking up the structure," Lieutenant Hayes called from the navigation console. 2 kilometers northeast. Energy signatures match the ancient descriptions. Reed nodded, gripping the armrest as the ship settled onto a plateau of black glass. Through the viewport, he could see it, a temple that defied physics, floating sections of stone rotating in impossible geometries, its architecture suggesting mathematics that hurt to contemplate. The expedition had taken 4 years of interstellar travel, funded by the Galactic Archaeological Consortium, and every member of the crew understood the stakes. 12 different species had sent representatives, each hoping to claim the legendary artifact said to rest within. The human contingent consisted of Reed and Hayes, both veterans of deep space exploration. They stepped onto Valdros Prime alongside the rest of the expedition team. The Crithian ambassador, a being of segmented chitin and compound eyes, clicked his mandibles in what might have been approval or disgust. The Valoran scholar, her translucent skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns, drifted forward on cushions of telekinetic force. A hulking Braxton warrior tested the ground with one massive foot, his 4 arms flexing in anticipation. "The archives were clear," the Valoran said, her voice like wind through chimes. "The builders left their greatest weapon here, the sword of claiming. Whoever raises it becomes master of this sector." "Myths and legends," the Braxton rumbled. "But we shall see." The temple entrance yawned before them, a corridor of seamless metal. It seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Reed felt his skin prickle as they entered. The air itself was different here, charged with something that made his teeth ache and his vision blur at the edges. Ancient glyphs covered the walls, writing in a language that predated most known civilizations. They walked for what felt like hours through corridors that looped and spiraled in ways that shouldn't exist within 3-dimensional space. Hayes kept checking her instruments, frowning at readings that made no sense. Gravity fluctuated with each step. Time seemed elastic, stretching and compressing unpredictably. Finally, they emerged into a chamber so vast its ceiling vanished into darkness. At the center, suspended in a column of pale light, hung the sword. It was beautiful and terrible. The blade seemed forged from starlight itself, its edge sharp enough to cut reality. The hilt was wrapped in what looked like woven shadow, and the crossguard bore symbols that burned themselves into the mind of anyone who looked too long. Power radiated from it in waves that made the air shimmer. "Magnificent," the Crithian breathed. The Valoran drifted forward first. She was among the eldest species, her people claiming descent from beings who had witnessed the birth of galaxies. Surely, if anyone could claim the sword, it would be her. She extended her consciousness toward the weapon, tendrils of thought reaching out to grasp it. The sword did not move. The column of light flared, and the Valoran was thrown backward with enough force to crack the stone floor where she landed. She rose slowly, her bioluminescence flickering in pain and confusion. The Braxton stepped forward next, confident in his species' legendary strength. He had personally bent titanium bars and shattered fortified doors. His people had conquered 17 worlds through sheer physical might. He reached out with all 4 arms, muscles bunching beneath his armored hide. The sword remained motionless. The warrior strained, veins bulging, a roar of effort echoing through the chamber. Nothing. Finally, exhausted, he stepped back, shaking his massive head. One by one, each member of the expedition tried. The Crithian attempted to manipulate it with his species' natural electromagnetic abilities. A phosphine engineer tried to hack the containment field using quantum algorithms. A draconid priest invoked ancient blessings that had once moved mountains. All failed. The sword stayed suspended, untouched and untouchable, mocking their efforts. Reed watched it all with growing fascination. There was a pattern here, something in how the sword rejected each attempt. The Valoran had approached it with presumption of superiority, the Braxan with brute force. Each species had relied on what made them powerful, what set them above others. Hayes noticed him staring. "What are you thinking, Captain?" "That maybe we're asking the wrong question," Reed said quietly. "Everyone's trying to prove they're worthy. But what if that's not what the builders wanted?" He stepped forward before he could talk himself out of it. The other expedition members watched with barely concealed disdain. Humans were young, barely a footnote in galactic history. They had no special powers, no ancient lineage, no overwhelming strength. What could they possibly accomplish where greater species had failed? Reed approached the column of light slowly. Up close, he could feel the sword's presence like a living thing, assessing him with invisible eyes. The weapon was testing him, he realized. Not his strength, or his heritage, or his technology. Something deeper. He thought about humanity's journey to the stars. They had not evolved with natural weapons, or telepathy, or centuries-long lifespans. They had been weak, fragile creatures on a hostile world, armed with nothing but stubborn determination and the ability to imagine better futures. They had looked at the impossible and decided to attempt it anyway, not because they were certain they would succeed, but because the trying itself mattered. Reed reached out slowly, not grasping or demanding, but offering. His hand touched the hilt. The sword moved. It came away from the column easily, settling into his grip as if it had been made for him. The blade hummed with power, resonating with something in his genetic code, his species' history of struggle and adaptation. Light flared through the chamber, so bright that everyone shielded their eyes. When the brilliance faded, Reed stood holding the sword of claiming, its weight somehow both immense and perfectly balanced. He could feel its capabilities flooding his mind, the ability to cut through any material, to create or destroy with equal ease, to reshape reality according to will. The chamber shook. Stone ground against stone, and portions of the walls began to shift and reconfigure. A voice spoke, not in sound, but directly into the minds of everyone present. It was ancient beyond measure, the recorded will of the builders themselves. The test is complete. The inheritor is chosen. Not the strongest, nor the eldest, nor the most cunning, but the one species who understands that greatness is not found in what you are, but in what you choose to become despite limitations. The Braxans stared in disbelief. Impossible. The humans are nothing. They have no power. Exactly, Reed said quietly, understanding flowing through him from the sword itself. We had to learn to rely on each other, to build tools, to cooperate and adapt. Every other species here evolved with advantages that made them dominant. Humans had to earn everything. The Valoran's bioluminescence shifted to colors that indicated deep thought. The builders were testing for potential, not achievement. For humility, not pride. Reed nodded slowly. The sword's power was intoxicating, showing him visions of what he could accomplish. He could reshape worlds, command fleets, become a god among mortals. The temptation sang in his blood. But he had not come here for power. None of the humans had. They had come seeking knowledge, driven by the same curiosity that had pulled them from caves to cities to the stars themselves. The sword is not for keeping, Reed said, the truth of it settling into his bones. The builders didn't leave it as a weapon. They left it as a lesson. He walked to the center of the chamber and held the blade high. With an effort of will that felt like tearing out part of his soul, he released it. The sword rose from his hands, floating once more in its column of light. But something had changed. The temple itself responded, walls becoming transparent to reveal vast libraries of builder knowledge, sciences beyond current understanding, philosophies that could reshape civilizations, warnings about dangers lurking in the dark between galaxies. The true inheritance, Hayes whispered, staring at the revealed wonders. The voice spoke again. You passed the final test. The sword tests warriors. The knowledge rewards the wise. Take what you have earned, children of Earth. Share it with those who would listen. Reed felt the weight of responsibility settle onto his shoulders. This changed everything. Humanity would not claim dominion through strength, but earn respect through the sharing of wisdom. It was a more difficult path, fraught with dangers both political and practical. Some species would resist, others would scheme to steal the knowledge for themselves. But it was the right path, the human path. As the expedition began cataloging the revealed archives, Reed caught Hayes' eye and saw his own determination reflected there. They had come seeking a legend and found something far more valuable. Validation that their species' greatest strength was not in what they could take, but in what they could share. The sword remained untouched in its column, waiting for the next test. The next species who might understand that true power comes not from the ability to,